Oh, hi guys. I was looking at some of the comments you guys have already. Kill some of the watch manufacturers. Okay. Everybody. Hi, John, Abdul, Jimmy, Dominic, Ali. How you guys doing? Uh, Alex, how you doing, neighbor? Okay. Hi, David. Okay. Um, well, I see you're off to start with a bang. Uh, what I suppose I was sort of was with the whole thing with watchmaking is that we have sort of this unusual kind of thing. I think on the one hand, those of us who are collectors, especially ones who are a little more serious about things like horology rather than bling, um, we make up a certain portion of the watch buying public. And no matter how we cut it, it's to our interest for watch manufacturers to stay in business. And oddly enough, companies like Richemont and what's the other one? Oh, I want to say scared. Swatch, and I'm trying to think of some other ones. Those are the big two, Swatch and Richemont. Okay, now why do I say they're important? It's really interesting how many watch companies they saved. There were a lot of watch companies, even big ones like Vacheron Constantin and so forth, that were not doing so hot survival wise. And they were saved by these big companies. Now, uh, the the big companies that saved them were on sort of the horns of a dilemma. On the one hand, they had to sort of preserve everything good about the company, why it was the sort of a horological gem, why it was, among other things, a member of the Holy Trinity and so forth. And at the same time, they had to come up with a market and things like high horology and some of these other things. In fact, that was, I think, developed originally by Richemont and the foundation and so forth. And so you end up with this with a necessity for keeping these guys alive, because if they go under, I mean, we've got nothing except a bunch of used watches. And so what I was thinking of is that, well, what direction would would we have it? And more, I'm beginning to see a split, and the split is along the lines of sort of kind of guys like us who want something special, especially horologically speaking, and then those who just want a cool looking watch. People who go out and they buy an Omega, they'll buy a Rolex, and they couldn't tell you what movement was in them to save their lives, but they can give you some of the history. Oh, this was used by so and so, or something like that, and that's perfectly fine. I don't criticize that, because without them, it would be very difficult to stay in business with just people who really like to buy in special watches. I'll put it that way. So um, what I've been thinking about is the the whole essence of what we could do, maybe, or what we would like to have, what we'd like to see, without the whole house of cards falling down, so to speak. In other words, is there something that we like to have, but also do it in such a way that um, others could, that it's not going to endanger anyone. In fact, would help. When I say help them to stay in business, because without that, we're sunk. I'm talking about Swiss um, watches in particular, but also German and Japanese and oncoming Chinese. Chinese, I think, may end up being our salvation if we go for a real. I say, look, we want something that's affordable, but we want to have something interesting horologically. Okay, that was sort of the start. Hi, Lee. How you doing, man? Least time, good to see you. Ali Riza. Hey, Ed. Not just the watch industry, the SUV saved the sports car. Yeah, yeah, I think so. Here you've got, God knows I've been complaining enough about silicone watches or silicone hairsprings in watches. And it's sort of like, I don't know. To me, it still seems like to have things like that is like having a bicycle with training wheels on it. Hey, Tim, and boats. Yeah. So, hey, Brian. Um, so I thought, what would things look like? And now this may sound more tooting or my own horn, or and those of us who are involved in it. Hey, Tony. Um, but something like Larique, that would be a company that really went after the excellence in horology, and we found it fortunately in Agenor. Perhaps that could have been found to some extent, perhaps to a lot lesser extent too, in Crenode and I don't know where else. We have learned, though, that because a company is famous or has a famous watchmaker involved, doesn't mean you're going to get good stuff from it. All right, you can be sort of as a way to get money on the side, but not the quality they want. Now, Agenor, on the other hand, we get both. But like our movements, the movements that we pay for in Agenor, are are very expensive compared to your run-of-the-mill movements. So that's what I've been thinking. And also, too, there's sort of this other kind of thing. Let me show you something. This is one of my favorite watches, and it's sort of it's sort of like picks up one side of the coin. Hang on a second. Let me bring it up here. And okay. This is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Geophysique True Second. Now, in looking at the True Second, it's about as plain and dull as imaginable. And one of the things that I found was that the which one was it? I think it was the Philippe Dufour Simplicity 37. Okay. Same kind of dial, except not even as good looking as that. I mean, it was this plain dial. And I think that there's sort of a point where they're making decisions. Gee, I spent all this money on the movement and spent all this time on the movement. I don't care about the dial and the case and the hands. Those are no big thing. So that sort of seems to be an unusual trade-off. Now, on the other hand, you see a lot of stuff, especially by some of these independent guys who are, from Germany in particular, who are, working and they have their engraving. They do all kinds of stuff like that. And they do it on the movement. And they do it here. They do it everywhere. But the movement is like either, sort of off the shelf movement or no big thing kind of movement. And so it's that seems to be the situation that we have to some extent. And I sort of like, where where could it go? So you have some interesting. God knows I'm never going to touch GLOC again, no time soon at all. But without sort of developing a style without bling, um, but with really good horology underneath. One company that seems to do that is H. Moser. They have some really interesting designs, but they also have really good movements. I think FP Journe does too, but FP Journe prices are just to the moon. Uh, H. Moser's are just halfway to the moon. So, um, there's some that will survive, Ali, on that. You take Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg, oddly enough, I ended up with a lot of respect for Zuckerberg because the watch he had was a Grubel and Force. Now, that kind of watch, these things are done by hand. They're done by very talented people, and the only way anyone can have them is that if they have a very high price for them. They're done by hand, and they can't, you know, there's sort of a you really don't have a thing on that as far as being just for the very rich. Boy, yeah, post pandemic certainly seemed to do that, but obviously we can't afford it, or some of us can, I guess. Like Lee is this, he owns oil wells in Oklahoma and stuff like that, and several brothels that they have there, so he can afford it. But the rest of us, no, I don't think so. We're not sort of in that league. So um, I don't know. It's one of these things that that I think this is why we end up with things like Larique. The only reason we have it is for those very reasons. We wanted something really high quality, and we also wanted something that we could afford. And the only way we could do it is basically handle a certain level of administration and distribution and things like that ourselves, and then have all of us who are involved in it with the understanding that if we can share, um, we're not so much sharing our resources as we are bird dog business too. That's a big one. Um, the the whole idea is like, how possible is it still? I don't really. I mean, on the one hand, you have these tip top watchmakers like the whole AHCI group, like FP Journe, like Raul Pages. Here's a young guy, relatively speaking. There are a number of them who you probably never heard of, but they're making these fantastic watches in very small amounts. You take H. Moser. I think they're only doing about 3,000 a year, and uh, earlier on they were only doing 2,000. And by earlier on, I mean maybe 5-10 years ago. That's what they were doing, or sort of pre and post pandemic on them. And so I suppose what I'm looking for is a way that it would be profitable for a company to do interesting things like that. Hello, and hello, Abdul in the welcome wagon. It's always good to see this. That's great. Okay, those are my thoughts, and so, like I say, when I talk about splits, and I think what we have on the one hand, we have the very rich, and we know we can't afford that, or most of us can't, and then we have the other direction is something more affordable. Yeah, Abdul, same here. Here's the doggone thing about it, though. Um, there are so many costs beyond what we paid as Larique in watchmaking. I think we've learned a lot of this from Brian Spade, who did the branding thing for us. And we were talking about the well, what should we do about promoting our latest one? That ever since we got the we got a video of the movement and the sort of the basic view of Arizulu, man, I tell you, I got like, holy smoke, this is incredible. And then looking at the movement and the complexity of it and everything, I'm thinking, wow. And that kind of thing, I mean, my God, that thing would be $30,000, on your, for companies that like the idea of staying in business. Hey, Dominic, let me see. In retailing a product and retailing a product, so much must be considered like warranty and service and separate spare parts, customer service, profit, long-term future. Exactly, Dominic. Dominic, that's exactly it. I think that's one of the reasons for silicone hairspring, because boy, I tell you, you can first of all, they're not going to need as much service, which from their point of view is a good thing. And some collectors, what do I care about a regulator and some things like that. Okay, all right. They have Abdul for your hand heart. We have what I think we could make a lot of something, a lot of progress on. We'll have something like a watch collectors AA, sort of collectors C Anonymous, Collectors Anonymous. Yeah, Abdul, that's another thing too. Some little companies like that, they simply have the right people. Everybody's friendly and very helpful. So this goes back to the issue, though. Okay, so you got a pretty looking watch. You have a nice looking one. Um, what more to it is there? And I think that's sort of the catch. You got a Handhart's a cool looking watch, I think. There are also ones like this. This is one I'm wearing my Mercator, and I really enjoy this watch. But this is let's face it, you wear this thing every day, you'll go blind. It's got the map compass with the time, and then the old Mercator type style map in the background. What a lot of fun it is! But in terms of uh, a watch that tell time, I'm much better off with something that I made my grandson. By the way, I screwed up the stem, and I've got to redo that again. I finally got the gold one on and everything, but I couldn't. It wouldn't hold. It was cut, I think, just a little too short, so I couldn't get it deep enough to pull out the uh, reset it. So I back to the drawing board, so to speak. Price of servicing is getting steep, even with ETAs. That is a very good point, John. It is. I sent this watch in I got recently, and it was like $900 for Girard-Perregaux movement. It was it was one of their 4,000s that they made for Boucheron. But yeah, now I have it at 0.0. That is right. Harboring 2 to the rescue. Absolutely. Harboring 2 is one of the few that I agree. Harboring 2 is almost a model Dark Star. I agree with that. People, they do have, they're creeping up toward $10,000. When I got mine, it was 4,000 something, and now they're way up. They're creeping up. Not the Felix. The Felix is still, the basic one, but here you've got people who are probably seen as terribly eccentric. Everything is based on their A11 too, but yeah, harboring 2 is sort of the idea. But see, this is after seeing the hang on a second. After this is the dial side part of the movement on the Air Zulu, and here you've got a single snail cam, a single bounce, just boom. This thing is on a 24-hour flip, and then the other one is on every 30 seconds. It's going like that. When I saw the video of that thing, it freaked me out. But this did not exist. This wasn't around. This was a bespoke movement that Agenor did for Lyrique. And so, after seeing it, then seeing it working, I think seeing it working made a big difference. Is that you have, you have this incredible whole movement system that we were able to get, just a bunch of guys getting together and doing it. So this is the kind of thing that we're finding out too, is with Lyrique. We learn some things perhaps we don't want to learn, but it's a tough business. It really is. I mean, I tell you, if you take a look at what are they called, the micro brands, the micro brands. I mean, they're like gnats. They come and go all the time, and so still saving for Bulgari scuba. That's cool. Hebdo Madari on getting my car serviced, and one of the sales noticed he had some Rolex with some color. He started bragging about a Rolex he has. I tell you, listen, man, there's nothing wrong with Rolex, but some of the owners they got this thing. Yeah, Dominic, it's like, and that's just the dial side of the movement. Here we got this thing, and we're, we're avant-garde, okay. We're avant broke. Yeah, what we're trying to set up is that we're working still on getting to be incorporated, I guess you'd call it, as a cooperative in Switzerland. It's called the Swiss Cooperative, basically, and so that's what we're trying to get done, going through the statutes and everything. Okay. All right. So how we doing on time? Geez, time really goes by. So what are some other ideas? Is there something? Oh, before I go on, what if Abdul and you guys who are involved in Larique, let me, before you go, what are you crazy? One thing we learn, if the numbers go up, the prices can go down simply because the parts and so on and so forth. The labor is the more that are done, the more labor you're going to have, but the more watches you produce, the more people you have, and so things like single shot for the development cost. I forgot, man. Forgot what we paid for the development of the AGH 6850, something like 25,000 bucks or something like that, just so that for getting it to that point. And then, but that's a one-time thing or a one-shot thing. So it doesn't matter whether you have two people doing it or 200 people. And the problem becomes, how are you going to herd all the cats, so to speak? I mean, if we have 100 and it's worldwide and we're sort of being able to get stuff done, think problems happen, mistakes are made. But the thought was like, what if we upped it to 300 instead of 100? And then a lot of things could be done with that uh, that wouldn't be able to be done otherwise. Financially, it would really help. The problem would be is like, herding all of the cats. Herding 100 is hard. Herding 300 is even harder. Just an idea, but it wouldn't have to be Larique. It could be anybody. This is one of the things too. I know this may sound strange, but I encourage not just Larique, but other kinds of, a bunch of guys get together and say, hey, look what Larique did. Let's do the same thing. Not a problem as far as we're concerned. I'm sure that Agenor would love to have the business too, up to a point. Yeah, John, you're right. That's exactly right. The watch industry is trying to change and survive, splitting hair in two to make hairsprings. Mm, yeah. Are you familiar with the watchmaker George Bamford? I've heard of Bamford. I was looking at his collaborations and designs for the first time and was impressed. Yeah, Bamford is an English British company, I think. I'm not sure, but I saw some stuff, and I think isn't Bamford just sort of a coat that goes over some other kind of movement and watch. I'm not sure. Yeah, I know, 300 voting on, but, there's a point, there's something, the concept. You have If you have a bunch of straws have their own characteristics, but when the straws get together, they form a new phenomena called a stack. And so rather than being individual straws, they are a new phenomena. Now, there's a point where you reach that stack. Larique is at the stack level, and that's, I mean, there are a whole lot of people and all over the world with different currencies and different languages and everything else. So, it just a thought, not, and again, like I said, this is not. We get black. Well, there's that, Dominic. Well, the thing of it is, Dominic, this is why we ought to be Larique ought to be celebrated by the Swiss companies, and here's why: we're serving a group that they're not, and we're bringing in a lot of business into the whole Swiss mechanism of watchmaking, with their dial makers, hand makers, uh, case makers, the movement, the whole thing. So, I mean, it's not that we're coming in and saying, okay, we're going to wipe out Rolex or something like that. They're not even selling to the same people who want the kind of watches that we want. And so there's nobody else doing it. This is why I was encouraging, like, hey, we're not run by geniuses. Yeah, Brian. Yeah, that's right. If they think like Brian, you're in. Otherwise, forget about it. Hi, Superman. Maybe we try 200 first. Well, in a way, we have. We put our little foot in the water on that, Abdul. What we did is that Air Zulu and Air Sultan, there were certain parts that were the same, and so we went with that. We had that. I'm thinking, yeah, maybe it's 200 first, but I don't even know if that's a good idea or not. Maybe, if there's certain advantages. I know some of the guys. There's one guy I know with his micro brand does a great job, has beautiful stuff, has a great price, and they're cranking out about, I think, 3,000 a whack on that, and selling out. Um, and that's one thing. There are a lot more people who can afford, let's say, $2,000 than there are who can afford $10,000 or who are willing to do that. I think the only way that Larica is able to do it is that we have these little things over time, and we pick it all up until finally we have enough money to pay everything, and that works. But there are you run into a hiccup, man, and that's just that's rough. Well, first of all, Ali, the money doesn't go to me. We have our that was how come I I we have our own banker now. I think you know we I think, well, we all have to we have to have some develop. We have to trust each other. We can't, we got some dingbats coming in there and they want their own way and they want this and they want that. That won't, yeah, that don't work. And they have to pass be like Brian test. Then we can go from there. Yes, I see. My time is up. Oh my goodness. Um, Out of time now. Let's think of something fun to talk about this afternoon at 4 o'clock New York time, Eastern Standard Time. Um, yeah, trust but verify. There you go, Rock. Anyway, guys, take care. Something we can think about. Maybe we can come up with something, another topic this afternoon that will keep us going. Take care.